In 1901, Greek sponge divers hauled treasure from an ancient shipwreck. Statues, coins, jewelry, and one corroded lump of bronze the size of a shoebox. The statues went on display. The lump went on a shelf. Nobody cared about it. Then it cracked open, and inside were gears. Hand-cut precision bronze gears, in an object 2,000 years old. It would take a century of X-rays to understand what they'd found, a machine that could compute the heavens. This is the file of the Antikythera mechanism. Welcome back to You High on Info. Tonight's file begins at the bottom of the Aegean Sea. In 1900, sponge divers sheltering from a storm near the island of Antikythera dropped down to the seabed and came up shaken, talking about a heap of corpses. They were bronze statues scattered around a Roman-era wreck. The salvage that followed was one of the first great underwater archaeology operations in history, done in brass diving helmets at deadly depths. One diver died. 2 were paralyzed. The treasure filled museum halls in Athens. The little corroded lump was catalogued, shelved, and forgotten, until 1902, when an archaeologist noticed something impossible in a split fragment, the unmistakable teeth of a gear wheel. For decades, the fragments kept their secret, the bronze too corroded to read. Then came X-rays, and finally, in 2006, high-resolution CT scans. What emerged stunned everyone. At least 30 interlocking gears, some with teeth a millimeter apart, packed into a wooden case the size of a mantel clock. Turn the hand crank, and the machine came alive. Pointers tracked the sun and moon through the zodiac. A tiny silvered ball rotated to show the moon's phase. Spiral dials on the back predicted eclipses, solar and lunar, years in advance, following an 18-year cycle Babylonian astronomers had discovered. One dial even counted down to the next Olympic Games. And buried in the gearing was a genius detail, a pin-and-slot device that made the moon pointer speed up and slow down, because the real moon does exactly that. They didn't just track the sky. They modeled its imperfections. Here is the mystery. Gearing this fine appears nowhere else in the surviving ancient world. Not in Rome. Not in Egypt. Nowhere. And after this ship went down, the technology vanishes from the record entirely. Nothing of comparable complexity appears again for roughly 1,400 years, until the great astronomical clocks of medieval Europe, invented from scratch by people who had no idea the Greeks had beaten them to it. Imagine losing the smartphone so completely that humanity has to reinvent it, and the second version takes until the year 3400. That's the scale of what disappeared. So who made it? The inscriptions are in Greek, and they read like a user's manual, which means machines like this were meant to be used, maybe even owned, by educated buyers. The Roman writer Cicero mentions geared models of the heavens built by Archimedes himself, 2 centuries before our shipwreck. This wasn't a lone miracle. It was a tradition. A masterpiece is never anyone's first attempt. Somewhere there were earlier models, workshops, teachers, apprentices, an entire lost craft of which exactly one example survived, because it happened to sink. Think about that. The only reason we know this technology existed is a shipping accident. The sea preserved what history erased. Today, the 82 fragments sit in the National Archaeological Museum in Athens, and researchers are still reading new inscriptions inside them with each scanning breakthrough. We know what it did. We still don't know who built it, how many others existed, or what else the ancient world knew that never got lucky enough to sink. How much lost knowledge do you think is still down there? Tell me in the comments. Tomorrow's file, a radio telescope in Ohio picks up a 72-second signal from deep space, and in 50 years it has never repeated.